For a dazzling, feverish period in world history, Spain was the central axis around which the globe seemed to turn. A colossal empire that spanned continents and commanded the seas. This was the Spanish Golden Age, a time of legendary military might, unprecedented artistic output, and a flow of wealth so vast it boggled the imagination. It was a kingdom that seemed untouchable, endowed with infinite resources and unstoppable momentum. Yet concealed beneath this shimmering layer of gold and imperial success lay a tragic, profound flaw. The very source of Spain's supremacy, the staggering treasure pouring in from the Americas, was the toxic element that ultimately guaranteed its destruction. But how could so much wealth become a curse? And what deeper forces were at play that even the wisest monarchs failed to comprehend? The story begins in the late 15th century, when the daring voyages of Christopher Columbus opened a door not just to new continents, but to a completely new realm of financial possibility. By the 1500s, Spain had quickly established an immense colonial structure, controlling vast territories that would eventually become nations like Mexico, Panama, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, and Cuba. Unlike other European powers who found trade routes and timber, Spain had uncovered the ultimate prize: massive, accessible deposits of silver and gold. The Spanish crown acted immediately, organizing the exploitation of these mines with ruthless efficiency. By the close of that critical century, colonial administrators had overseen the extraction of more than 180 tons of gold and a nearly incomprehensible 16,000 tons of silver. This was wealth on a scale the Old World had never witnessed, demanding a vast, complex logistical system to manage its journey home across the perilous ocean. That system was embodied by the famous treasure fleets, which served as the literal lifeline of the Spanish Empire. Every single year, two great convoys would sail out of key Spanish ports like Seville and Cadiz. Their initial cargo was essential European manufactured goods: paper, fine fabrics, wine, and books, intended for the colonial markets. After navigating the notorious storms of the Atlantic, the convoys would split, one sailing north towards the Caribbean and the coast of Mexico, the other heading south to the ports serving Argentina and Chile. The return trip was when the true danger and drama unfolded. The holds of the ships were packed tightly with valuable colonial produce: lumber, sugar, tomatoes, peppers, and rare gems. But the weight that truly sank their keels came from the vast caches of precious metals. The massive ships, heavily laden and perpetually under the threat of sudden storms or predatory ships, were always accompanied by powerful warship escorts. Yet, despite the lurking dangers from buccaneers and the merciless sea, the majority of the convoys successfully completed their voyage. The sight of these fleets finally docking back in Spain was a spectacular, crowded event, as observers gathered to watch the precious bullion pour into the kingdom's coffers. Of course, the crown took its statutory share, a rigorous 20% tax on all incoming wealth known as the quinto real, a colossal sum that flowed directly to the royal treasury, financing the empire's enormous military, raising new armies, and funding the construction of glorious cathedrals, palaces, and fortifications. For a generation, it appeared Spain had stumbled upon the secret to inexhaustible power, propelling it into the status of Europe's undisputed superpower. Spanish armies fought and campaigned across the Mediterranean, through the turbulent Low Countries, and throughout the American colonies, while the Spanish Navy, the mighty Armada, patrolled the global seas, projecting their authority everywhere. This success fueled a cultural explosion, a time when royal and noble patrons commissioned magnificent buildings, fostered new musical forms, and sponsored enduring artistic achievements. It was the age that gave the world writers like Miguel de Cervantes, whose immortal creation, Don Quixote, gave Spanish literature a permanent place in the global pantheon. To every rival nation watching from the sidelines, Spain had seemingly cracked the code to infinite prosperity. Yet, this golden glow was entirely deceptive. In its dizzying pursuit of external wealth, Spain fell into a profound economic vulnerability. The core issue was an utter dependency on imported gold and silver. When you can buy anything you need with bullion from overseas, the incentive to produce goods locally vanishes. Why invest in Spanish workshops, agricultural improvements, or domestic manufacturing when you can simply import everything from abroad? Other powerful nations, however, grasped this lesson much faster. England, France, and the Netherlands all utilized their burgeoning colonial wealth, but they wisely channeled that money into strengthening their industries at home, building efficient workshops, investing in improved farming techniques, and developing robust manufacturing sectors. Spain made the critical error of doing the precise opposite. The Spanish monarchs and aristocratic classes preferred the effortless luxury of importation, allowing domestic industries to wither, local workers to be laid off, and productive farmlands to be neglected. The nation's economy was slowly being hollowed out from within, relying only on a fickle overseas supply chain. This economic fragility was fatally compounded by a devastating loss of human capital. In the early 1500s, driven by intense religious pressure and political intolerance, Spain carried out the mass expulsion of over 150,000 Jews and Muslims. This wasn't just a humanitarian tragedy, it was an economic catastrophe. Many of these expelled citizens were highly skilled merchants, sophisticated bankers, and expert craftsmen whose absence crippled foundational Spanish industries like banking, steel production, glassmaking, and textiles. By removing the very people who possessed the skills to build a stable, diversified economy, Spain eliminated its ability to adapt. With the nation producing fewer goods to sell, and the market simultaneously flooded with American bullion, the inevitable occurred. Prices began to skyrocket. This period became historically known as the Price Revolution. Crucially, while the cost of bread, clothes, and housing surged, wages failed to keep pace. As ordinary Spaniards grew poorer, many abandoned their failing city trades to desperately try and scrape a living from the neglected rural lands. The gold that was supposed to usher in a new era of wealth instead brought widespread hardship to the common people. The problems of inflation and economic fragility were then multiplied by reckless overspending and relentless imperial overstretch. Spain's rulers, believing the gold would never stop flowing, engaged in lavish luxury consumption, filling their palaces with fine china, expensive porcelain, exotic spices, and rare gemstones. More dangerously, the Spanish throne had passed into the hands of the powerful Habsburg dynasty, whose sheer dynastic ambition dragged Spain into endless, costly wars. The towering figure of Emperor Charles V, who ruled Spain and a significant portion of Central Europe, harbored a dream of a grand, unified European empire. He famously stated his view of language and power. "I speak Spanish to God, Italian to women, French to men, and German to my horse." Charles and his successors threw Spain's resources into conflicts against the rising power of France, the expanding reach of the Ottoman Empire, the forces of the Protestant Reformation, and the determined rebels in the Netherlands. These campaigns consumed money at a rate the colonies simply could not sustain. To pay for these titanic conflicts, Spain began borrowing enormous sums from Europe's major banking families. This created the most dangerous financial trap of all. The loans were structured to be repaid with American gold, often before the treasure ships had even left the ports. If a fleet was lost to a tropical storm or captured by enemies, Spain's finances would instantly collapse. The monarchy defaulted on its debts not once, but 3 times in the 1500s alone, in 1557, 1575, and 1596. Each default was a shocking blow that severely damaged Spain's international reputation, drying up future credit sources. The empire's global reach was undeniable, but its underlying financial system was brittle and constantly on the brink of failure. It was only a matter of time before its many vulnerabilities were exploited. By the 1600s, the cracks in the empire were impossible to ignore. Corruption was rampant, as colonial officials and local elites learned how to divert vast amounts of treasure into their own accounts before it could be taxed and shipped to Spain. Smuggling became a sophisticated, organized business. Seeing this decline, Spain's rivals grew increasingly confident and aggressive. French and English privateers began to deliberately target Spanish shipping, and Dutch rebels intensified their attacks on the vulnerable convoys. Though most fleets still made it home, the risks and losses increased with every passing year. The vulnerability became brutally clear in 1628, when the daring Dutch Admiral Piet Hein struck a fatal blow, capturing an entire treasure fleet off the coast of Cuba in the Bay of Matanzas. The Dutch hauled the immense silver cargo back to Amsterdam in a triumphant public spectacle, while the news sent an immediate, crushing shockwave through the Spanish financial system. Events like this didn't just cost Spain money. They destabilized the value of silver across the entire European continent. Other economies, like England, used the resulting price volatility as an opportunity to double down on their own manufacturing, strengthening their textile industry and preparing the groundwork for the industrial future. Spain, still addicted to the quick fix of bullion, simply could not keep pace. The final decisive blow to the empire was tragically simple. The gold ran out. By the middle of the 17th century, the richest, most easily accessible veins of silver and gold in the Americas were largely exhausted. Extracting the remaining ore required digging deeper, using more complex machinery, and incurring far greater costs. As the output from the mines began to decline inexorably, so too did Spain's financial lifeline. Without the endless flood of American bullion, the already fragile economy collapsed entirely. Imports dwindled, and the long-neglected domestic industries were simply too weak to suddenly step up and fill the void. Inflation, debt, and deep-seated corruption left the Spanish state paralyzed, unable to recover or adapt. Meanwhile, a quieter, more profound change was underway in the Americas. As Spain's grip weakened, the colonial economies in Mexico and Peru were forced to become self-sufficient. They developed robust local industries, producing their own food, livestock, and manufactured goods. Colonial elites, now diverting silver away from the crown and investing it locally, grew stronger and less dependent on Madrid. This slow, steady movement toward economic autonomy was the powerful precursor that planted the seeds of the independence movements that would sweep through Latin America a century later. Back in Europe, the consequences were undeniable. Spain's army shrank, its navy declined, and its influence waned as England and France surged ahead, claiming their place as the new superpowers of the continent. The story of the Spanish Empire then concluded with a whimper rather than a bang. The once mighty Habsburg dynasty finally collapsed under the combined weight of imperial decay and dynastic misfortune. Spain's last Habsburg king, Charles II, was a famously sickly, frail, and childless monarch. When he died in 1700, the Spanish throne passed to the French Bourbon dynasty. The new rulers were appalled by the state of the nation they had inherited. It was utterly bankrupt, its industries broken, and its vast colonies restless and disloyal. The once mighty Spanish Empire was now a hollow echo of its former self, its golden age revealed as a fleeting, unsustainable spectacle. The tragic irony of the Spanish decline offers a compelling lesson that resonates even today. Building a nation's wealth on the foundation of easy treasure alone is fundamentally unsustainable. Spain squandered its American gold on endless foreign wars, conspicuous luxury consumption, and non-essential imports, while fatally neglecting the true engines of lasting prosperity: agricultural development, industrial manufacturing, and the skills of its own people. When the gold ultimately ceased to flow, Spain's future vanished with it. Other nations, witnessing this collapse, learned a different, more powerful lesson. England, France, and the Netherlands channeled their colonial wealth into creating durable domestic industries that could adapt to economic shocks and thrive independent of external imports. They weathered the storms of inflation and geopolitical change, rising in the centuries to come to dominate global trade and industry. For Spain, its incredible golden age was defined by a devastating irony. What had seemed like the ultimate blessing, an endless supply of treasure from across the sea, proved instead to be the empire's final, fatal curse. Spain reaped what it had sown, proving that sometimes too much gold is indeed the most dangerous treasure of all. If you found this historical narrative compelling, please remember to like the video, comment below with your thoughts on Spain's economic mistakes, and share this video with anyone who loves history. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the empires of the past.